The night was quiet until Emma's scream cut through the stillness, raw and trembling with fear. She clutched her 7-year-old son Noah tightly, her arms a desperate shield against the chaos unraveling around them. Mark, her ex-husband, stormed across the small apartment, his face twisted with anger and betrayal, words slamming into her like shards of glass. Emma said, "You can't just walk away like this," her voice cracking. But Mark's response was only the thunder of the door slamming behind him. The sharp echo rattled the fragile walls, leaving silence heavy with dread. Noah buried his face against her chest, trembling, whispering, "Mom, don't let him take me." Emma's heart pounded as the faint sound of sirens drifted through the window, distant yet near enough to feel like fate closing in. She whispered, "I won't, baby, I promise." But her thoughts swirled. How much more could she lose, and how far would she have to go to protect him? This night would change everything, and she knew the fight for her child had only just begun. Emma sat frozen on the living room floor, arms wrapped around Noah, as if letting go would shatter them both. The silence felt louder than the slam of the door, every second stretching endlessly. She whispered, "It's okay, sweetheart. I've got you," but her own voice trembled with doubt. Noah sniffled, wiping his small hand across his cheek, eyes wide with confusion. He asked, "Why is Daddy so mad?" The question cut deep, twisting in her chest. Emma kissed his forehead, holding back her tears, and said, "He doesn't know how to love the right way." The sirens outside faded, leaving only the hum of the refrigerator and the pounding of her heartbeat. She thought of the battles ahead, of courtrooms and accusations, of proving she was enough. The fear weighed heavy, but as Noah curled into her arms, she felt a fragile thread of strength take hold. Whatever storm was coming, she would endure it for him. Emma tucked Noah into bed, brushing strands of blonde hair from his damp forehead. He whispered, "Will Daddy come back tomorrow?" Her heart clenched, but she forced a smile and replied softly, "Not tonight, love, just rest." His small hand lingered in hers before drifting to sleep, breath slowing as innocence wrapped around him like a fragile shield. She stood quietly by the bedside, the room bathed in pale moonlight, her reflection faint in the window glass. For a moment, the silence felt like safety, but underneath it pulsed a rising dread. She thought of lawyers, bills stacked on the counter, and the lies Mark would spin. Her chest tightened with fear of losing Noah, but she swallowed it down. She leaned close, kissed his cheek, and whispered, "I'll fight for you." The words steadied her trembling, anchoring her resolve. The battle wasn't tomorrow. It had already begun. Alone in the kitchen, Emma sat hunched at the table, bills scattered in front of her, the numbers blurring through tired eyes. She rubbed her temples, the hum of the refrigerator echoing her fatigue. Her phone buzzed, a message from Sarah, her closest friend. "Are you okay?" Emma stared at the glowing screen, her thumb hovering, unsure how to answer. The truth was jagged and unbearable, but she typed, "I'm holding on." A sob caught in her throat as she deleted it, replacing it with, "Yeah, I'll be fine." She pressed send and pushed the phone aside. The loneliness pressed down heavier than the bills, heavier than the silence. She closed her eyes, whispering, "I have to be strong," but her voice wavered in the emptiness. Tonight was just the beginning, and she knew she couldn't survive it alone. The clock ticked past midnight, shadows stretching long across the apartment. Emma sat by Noah's bedroom door, knees pulled to her chest, listening to the steady rhythm of his breath. Exhaustion pressed heavy, but fear refused to let her close her eyes. She thought of Mark's rage, of the custody battle looming like a storm, of how fragile her world had become. She whispered to herself, "He won't take you from me," a vow wrapped in trembling determination. Her fingers dug into her palms, nails biting skin, grounding her in the moment. Beyond the window, the city glowed faintly, indifferent to her pain, but inside this small apartment, a war had already begun. She wiped her tears and stood slowly, her reflection in the window catching a glimpse of strength she hadn't realized she still had. She whispered, "We'll survive this, together." Morning crept in with pale sunlight, spilling through thin curtains, but Emma's exhaustion weighed heavier than the night before. She sat at the edge of the bed, staring at the floor, listening to Noah's quiet breathing from the other room. Her mind raced with thoughts of Mark's anger and the custody fight he would unleash. She whispered to herself, "He'll try to destroy me." The bills stacked on the table loomed in her thoughts, each envelope another reminder of how fragile her security was. Noah padded into the room, rubbing his eyes, voice soft. "Mom, can we have pancakes?" Emma forced a smile, answering, "Of course, sweetheart." Her voice cracked, but she rose, determined to give him normalcy. As she moved to the kitchen, her hands trembled over the frying pan, oil sizzling like sparks of her anxiety. She reminded herself, strength wasn't optional anymore, it was survival. The aroma of pancakes filled the kitchen, a fragile comfort masking the storm within Emma. Noah hummed softly, legs swinging as he sat at the small table, unaware of the heaviness pressing down. Emma set a plate before him, forcing a cheerful smile, but inside, fear gnawed at her resolve. Her phone buzzed, flashing Mark's name across the screen. Her stomach clenched as she silenced it, slipping the phone face down on the counter. Noah asked innocently, "Is Daddy coming for breakfast?" The words pierced like glass, and Emma steadied herself, answering, "Not today, honey, just us." His face fell briefly before brightening at the sight of syrup. "Ah." Emma exhaled, whispering silently to herself, "Just keep him safe." The sun painted soft golden light across the walls, but the shadows in her mind loomed larger, warning her the peace wouldn't last long. Later that day, Emma sat nervously across from her manager in the cramped office of the diner where she worked. The fluorescent lights flickered above, casting a harsh glow that mirrored the unease in her chest. Her manager sighed, sliding a stack of papers aside, saying, "Emma, you've been late 3 times this week." Shame flushed her cheeks, and she quickly explained, "I'm doing my best, things at home are complicated." His expression softened only slightly, but his tone was firm. "We need reliability." She clenched her hands in her lap, nails digging into her skin, knowing every shift mattered. The thought of losing this job twisted like a knife. She nodded silently, promising, "I'll do better." As she left the office, her reflection in the glass door revealed both fear and quiet fury. She would not let everything collapse, not now, not when Noah needed her most. By evening, Sarah arrived, her presence filling the apartment with warmth Emma hadn't felt in days. Sarah hugged her tightly, whispering, "You don't have to do this alone." Emma's eyes burned, but she forced a smile, muttering, "I'm trying to stay strong." They sat on the couch, Noah curled between them, his laughter briefly softening the heavy air. Sarah glanced at Emma's pile of unopened mail, her expression clouding. "Have you told your lawyer everything?" she asked cautiously. Emma hesitated, shifting uncomfortably, replying, "Not everything." Sarah's brows furrowed, concern deepening in her gaze. Emma looked away, the weight of secrets pressing hard. Noah leaned against her shoulder, giggling at Sarah's playful wink, oblivious to the storm circling. Emma's heart ached. Her friend's loyalty was real, but trust felt like a risk she wasn't ready to take. Silence lingered, heavy with unspoken truths. When night fell again, Emma stood at the apartment window, city lights flickering beyond the glass like distant promises. Her reflection stared back, tired, uncertain but unbroken. She whispered, "He'll try to take everything," as if admitting it aloud would dull its edge. Behind her, Noah slept soundly, his small figure curled beneath blankets, unaware of the war rising outside their walls. Emma pressed her forehead against the cool glass, remembering Mark's threats and the look in his eyes, filled with venom. The phone buzzed again, another message unanswered. She clenched her fists, whispering, "You won't win." The words echoed like a vow in the stillness. For the first time, she allowed herself to imagine victory, not just surviving, but reclaiming her life. Yet fear still lingered, sharp and relentless, reminding her that the storm had only just begun. The courthouse smelled of old wood and anxiety, its high ceilings amplifying the tension inside Emma's chest. She walked slowly down the corridor, Noah's small hand clasped tightly in hers, though he didn't yet understand the storm awaiting them. Mark stood at the far end, his suit crisp, his smirk sharp enough to pierce her calm. He muttered something to his lawyer, making sure Emma could see his confidence. She pulled Noah closer, whispering, "Stay strong, baby," though her own knees threatened to buckle. Sarah appeared by her side, placing a reassuring hand on her shoulder, reminding her she wasn't entirely alone. Yet every glance, every whisper from strangers in the hall felt like judgment. Emma forced her chin higher, telling herself, "This is not the day I break." The courtroom doors opened, and the weight of the fight pressed down heavier than ever before. Inside the courtroom, the atmosphere was cold and sterile, the weight of justice hanging heavy in the air. Emma sat at the long wooden table, her hands folded tightly to still their trembling. Across from her, Mark leaned back with smug confidence, his lawyer whispering in his ear. The judge entered, eyes sharp, gavel striking once to command silence. Emma's lawyer leaned toward her, voice calm yet firm, "We'll show them the truth." She nodded weakly, stealing a glance at Noah seated quietly behind, Sarah's hand resting on his shoulder. Mark's gaze burned into her, daring her to falter, feeding off her vulnerability. The judge's voice cut through the silence, "We'll begin with the father's petition." Emma's heart raced. This was more than a battle of words. It was survival, and every moment would test the limits of her strength. Mark's lawyer spoke first, voice smooth and calculated, painting Emma as unstable and unreliable. Every word landed like a blade, slicing into her carefully built resolve. She clenched her fists beneath the table, nails digging into her palms. He claimed she couldn't provide financial stability, waving documents that twisted half-truths into weapons. Emma's cheeks burned, but she forced her eyes forward, refusing to let him see her break. When her lawyer stood, the air shifted. His words cut through the accusations, firm yet steady. "Emma has given everything to ensure her son is cared for." Emma glanced at Noah, his wide eyes fixed on her, silently pleading for her strength. Mark smirked, but she met his gaze, unflinching for the first time. This wasn't just a fight for custody, it was the battle for their lives. Emma's turn came, her lawyer guiding her gently to the witness stand. She placed her hand on the Bible, voice trembling as she swore to tell the truth. The room blurred around her, but Noah's small face anchored her. The lawyer asked carefully, "Can you describe your role as a mother?" Emma inhaled deeply, answering, "I've given up everything to make sure my son feels safe and loved." Her words cracked but held weight, filling the silent courtroom. Mark's lawyer pounced quickly, twisting questions to imply she was unfit, his tone dripping with accusation. Emma's voice shook but did not shatter. "I may not be perfect, but I am his safe place." A tear slid down her cheek as she added softly, "I am his mother. That is enough." The judge studied her closely, pen tapping faintly against the desk, silence heavy with meaning. The first day in court ended, the gavel striking finality into the tense silence. Emma exhaled slowly, shoulders trembling as though she had carried the weight of the world. Sarah squeezed her hand, whispering, "You did better than you think." Noah rushed to her side, wrapping his arms around her waist, whispering, "I knew you'd be brave." Emma knelt, pressing her forehead to his, whispering back, "I'll always fight for you." Across the room, Mark walked out with his lawyer, smugness unbroken, already plotting the next attack. Emma stood, watching him leave, fear and determination clashing in her chest. Outside the courtroom doors, the sun was setting, painting the marble hallways in orange glow. The fight wasn't over, but for the first time she felt a spark of strength ignite, fragile yet unyielding, a fire born of love and defiance. The air outside the courthouse was heavy, dusk painting the sky in muted shades of gray and red. Emma gripped Sarah's arm as they walked, her voice tight with exhaustion. "I can't keep doing this alone," she admitted, her vulnerability spilling past her defenses. Sarah squeezed her hand, promising, "You're not alone." Yet her eyes shifted uneasily, avoiding Emma's gaze. Emma caught it, her chest tightening, sensing something unsaid. Noah skipped ahead, chasing a falling leaf, his laughter too light for the moment. Emma forced a smile for him, but doubt pressed hard. Sarah's phone buzzed and she turned quickly, shielding the screen. Emma asked softly, "Who is it?" Sarah muttered, "Work," but the tremor in her voice betrayed her. Emma felt her stomach drop, a quiet suspicion whispering that betrayal had already begun to creep into her fragile circle of trust. That evening, Emma sat at the kitchen table, papers scattered like fallen leaves, bills mingling with legal documents. She rubbed her eyes, exhaustion pulling at her bones. Sarah entered quietly, setting 2 mugs of tea down. Emma looked up, searching her face. "Tell me the truth," she said, her voice low. "Are you hiding something from me?" Sarah froze, her lips parting, but no words spilling out. Finally she muttered, "I didn't mean for you to find out like this." Emma's stomach churned as Sarah admitted she had spoken to Mark weeks earlier, believing he only wanted peace. Emma's fists clenched, betrayal twisting inside her chest like a knife. "You chose him over me?" she whispered, her voice breaking. Sarah's eyes brimmed with guilt. "I was trying to help." But the fracture between them had already widened, threatening to collapse their bond. Emma stepped outside into the cold night air, her breath visible under the street lamp glow. She needed space from Sarah's betrayal, her heart pounding with a mix of rage and despair. She whispered into the night, "Why does everyone leave when I need them most?" Noah's voice carried from the doorway, sleepy and soft. "Mom, are you okay?" She forced a smile, beckoning him back inside, answering gently, "I'm fine, sweetheart. Go rest." But the truth pressed heavy. The streets around her seemed endless, shadows stretching long as if echoing her loneliness. Suddenly, a figure emerged from across the street, hesitant yet familiar. Emma froze, her pulse quickening as recognition tugged at the edge of her memory. The man stepped closer, his face lined with age and regret. Her uncle, James, absent from her life for decades, whispered, "It's time we talked." Inside the living room, tension wrapped around the walls as James sat across from Emma, his eyes heavy with unspoken truths. Noah leaned sleepily on the couch, Sarah absent, the silence filled with echoes of betrayal and unanswered questions. Emma's voice cracked. "Why now? Where were you all these years?" James lowered his gaze, his voice rough. "I watched from a distance. I stayed away because I thought I'd only make things worse." Emma's hands trembled as she snapped, "Worse than being abandoned?" His shoulders slumped, grief etched deep in his lines. "I couldn't stay away any longer. He's not going to stop, Emma. You need someone on your side." Emma's eyes narrowed, torn between anger and desperate relief. For the first time she wondered if trusting a ghost from her past was her only path forward. The night stretched deep, silence broken only by the ticking clock. Emma sat alone after James left, staring at the door, her mind racing. Sarah's betrayal cut deep, yet James' sudden return stirred a different storm inside her. She whispered, "Why now?" again, as if the air might answer. In Noah's room, his soft breathing was a fragile reminder of what she was fighting for. Emma pressed her palms together, whispering, "I can't trust anyone, but I have to keep moving." Fear and hope tangled inside her like threads too knotted to separate. The window reflected her tired face, her eyes darker than she remembered, but also holding a flicker of resolve. She vowed under her breath, "No one will take him from me, not Sarah, not Mark, not anyone." The words echoed like iron, sealing her path forward into even greater battles. The diner buzzed faintly with clattering dishes and murmurs of customers, but Emma felt trapped in her own storm. She wiped the counter mechanically, her mind spinning with Sarah's betrayal and James' sudden reappearance. A voice broke her haze, warm and steady, "You look like you're fighting a war in your head." She turned to see Daniel, a familiar face from years ago, now standing tall in his work uniform, kind eyes fixed on her. Emma forced a small smile, replying, "It feels like I'm losing one." He leaned closer, lowering his voice, "You're stronger than you think." For a moment, the tension in her chest loosened. Yet even as his words steadied her, guilt tugged at her heart. Could she allow herself even the smallest distraction when everything was crumbling? Still, the warmth in his presence was undeniable, sparking something she thought she had buried. After her shift, Emma stepped into the cool night air, Daniel following with 2 coffees in hand. He handed her one with a gentle grin, saying, "You looked like you needed this." She hesitated, then accepted, warmth spreading through her chilled fingers. They sat on the bench outside, the hum of traffic filling the silence. He spoke softly. "I remember when you used to talk about dreams bigger than this town." Emma stared at the coffee, whispering, "Dreams don't feed a child." Daniel's expression softened, his voice low. "But love does. And you've got more of that than anyone I know." Her throat tightened, his kindness both comforting and dangerous. She smiled faintly, whispering, "Thank you." For the first time in days, she felt seen. Yet beneath it, fear lingered. Mark would use even her smallest joys as a weapon. The next morning, Emma sat at her lawyer's office, nerves buzzing as she recounted the growing threats from Mark. "He'll twist everything," she said, her voice trembling. Her lawyer leaned forward, his tone calm. "Then we'll show the truth. But you must stay steady." Emma nodded, her hands gripping the folder of documents so tightly her knuckles whitened. Suddenly, Mark barged in with his lawyer, smirking. "Still playing the victim, Emma?" His words dripped venom. Emma stiffened but didn't flinch, replying firmly, "I'm protecting my son." Mark sneered, "You'll lose him." Rage burned through her, but she kept her voice calm. "Not this time." The tension snapped like a wire ready to break, but her lawyer's steady presence anchored her. She realized the fight would test not only her patience, but her very will to stand. Later that evening, Emma sat in Noah's room, reading him a story as he nestled under blankets. His small voice interrupted, "Mom, will Daddy be mad if I stay here?" Emma's heart cracked, but she kissed his forehead, whispering, "No one's taking you away, I promise." His eyelids grew heavy, drifting into sleep as she lingered beside him, smoothing his blonde hair. The quiet moment was shattered when her phone buzzed on the nightstand. She picked it up and froze. Another threatening message from Mark, "Enjoy tonight, because soon he'll be mine." Her hand trembled as she locked the screen, placing it face down. She whispered to Noah's sleeping form, "You are my reason, my strength." Tears burned her eyes, but resolve anchored deeper. The battle wasn't only in court, it was already at her doorstep, pushing harder with every breath. The weekend brought another confrontation, this time at the park where Noah played. Emma's chest tightened when she spotted Mark across the playground, his smirk cold, his presence intentional. He waved at Noah, whose innocent smile lit up as he ran toward him. Emma rushed forward, intercepting quickly, her voice sharp, "You don't get to just show up." Mark leaned down, whispering harshly, "You can't keep him from me forever." Emma gripped Noah's hand, holding him close. "This isn't your playground to control," she said firmly. Mark's eyes darkened, muttering, "We'll see about that." Noah clung tighter to her, confusion clouding his small face. Emma's pulse raced, but she stood her ground, every fiber of her being screaming that this war was only escalating. The world watched casually, unaware that this moment was a battlefield, dressed as a Sunday outing. The second day in court began with tension so sharp, it seemed to cut the air itself. Emma walked into the courtroom with Noah's photo tucked in her bag, her silent shield of courage. Mark stood tall, his lawyer by his side, eyes burning with smug confidence. The judge's voice echoed, "We will hear final testimonies today." Emma's lawyer whispered firmly, "Stay steady, no matter what." She nodded, though her palms were clammy, and her heart pounded against her ribs. Mark took the stand first, weaving lies with ease, painting himself as the victim. Emma clenched her fists under the table, rage simmering. She glanced at Noah in the gallery, sitting quietly with Sarah, his small presence giving her the strength to endure. Every word Mark spoke twisted truth into poison, but Emma whispered to herself, "Today, I fight back." Emma's turn came, and as she rose to the stand, her knees wavered but her spirit refused to bend. She placed her hand on the Bible once more, swearing to tell the truth. Her lawyer asked softly, "What drives you as a mother?" Emma's eyes welled as she answered, "Everything I am, every sacrifice I've made, is for my son's safety." Her voice broke, but the words filled the silent room with raw truth. Mark's lawyer sneered, twisting questions. "Isn't it true you're financially unstable? That you lean on others?" Emma steadied herself, replying, I may not have wealth, but I have strength, love, and resilience. That's what makes a safe home. A tear slid down her cheek as she whispered, He is my world. The gallery stirred, emotions rippling. For the first time, Emma felt her voice carry the weight of undeniable truth. As Emma stepped down from the stand, Mark exploded, unable to mask his fury. He shouted across the courtroom, She's lying, she's unfit. His lawyer tried to calm him, but his rage spilled over. The judge slammed his gavel, voice booming, Order! Emma stood frozen, her chest tight, but something in his outburst shifted the air. His mask had cracked. She looked at the jury, their faces changing, seeing his venom for the first time. Emma's lawyer seized the moment, saying firmly, This is the man who claims to protect his child, yet his anger shows the truth. Mark's glare seared through her, but she didn't flinch. For the first time, she stood taller, meeting his eyes with steel in her own. She whispered to herself, You won't break me. The tide of the battle was shifting. The courtroom grew quieter, the storm of Mark's outburst settling into heavy silence. James appeared at the back of the gallery, his rugged presence unexpected. Emma's heart jolted as she saw him step forward when called. The lawyer asked, State your connection. James' voice was steady but regretful. I am Emma's uncle. I left long ago, but I've returned to tell the truth. He revealed past conversations with Mark, exposing schemes and lies, his words cutting through the courtroom like fire. Emma's chest tightened, torn between resentment and relief. James looked at her briefly, his eyes carrying apology and strength. The judge leaned forward, intrigued by the testimony. For the first time, Emma felt the ground beneath her shift in her favor. Mark's jaw tightened, rage restrained, as his carefully spun narrative began to unravel. The day reached its breaking point as the judge prepared to end proceedings. Emma sat upright, exhausted yet stronger than she had ever felt. Mark's lies had been exposed, his rage witnessed by all, his grip loosening. The judge's voice carried gravity. This court has seen enough to weigh the truth. Emma squeezed her hands together, whispering to herself, Please, let this be enough. She looked at Noah, his innocent face filled with trust, and knew that her fight was not just survival, it was victory waiting to be claimed. Across the room, Mark slumped in his chair, fury simmering but powerless. Emma finally allowed herself to breathe, tears threatening but held back. The gavel struck, the sound echoing like thunder. Though the decision wasn't final yet, hope surged inside her for the first time. The storm had reached its peak, but she had not broken. Morning broke soft and thin. The courthouse quiet like a held breath. Emma sat beside her lawyer, fingers interlaced, whispering, Whatever happens, I stand. Noah waited outside with Sarah, safe from the verdict's weight. Mark stared ahead, jaw set, the cracks of yesterday still visible. The judge read slowly, each word heavy, each pause a cliff. Emma felt time stretch, memory, and fear tugging hard. The decision landed at last, and relief surged like light through storm. She exhaled a trembling breath and said, We're okay, as if speaking safety into being. The room did not cheer, but her heart did, quiet and fierce. Outside the courthouse, the city hummed as if nothing monumental had happened. Noah ran into Emma's arms and she lifted him, breath catching at the simple joy. We're going home, she said, voice soft but certain. Sarah stepped close, remorse shadowing her smile, and murmured, I'm sorry for failing you. Emma held her gaze, then nodded. Help me do better from here. Mark watched from across the steps, anger dimmed to a tired glare. He turned away, swallowed by traffic and noise. Emma felt the world tilt toward hope, fragile but true, like a dawn you choose to believe. Back at the apartment, the air felt lighter, dust motes drifting like confetti and sunbeams. Emma set Noah's backpack down and said, Today we start new. He grinned, asking for pancakes, and she laughed, the sound ringing clear. Daniel knocked softly, holding a paper bag and 2 coffees. Truce offering, he joked, eyes warm. Emma thanked him, steady now, and said, "I can't promise easy, only honest." He nodded, understanding threaded through silence. As Noah chattered about heroes, Emma realized she had become one for him. Not perfect, just present. And that was enough to begin again. Evening settled gentle, and James arrived with a hesitant knock. He stood in the doorway, apology written into his stance. "I should have come sooner," he said, voice rough. Emma breathed in, measured and calm, then answered, "You're here now. Earn it with action." He nodded, a vow, unspoken but clear. Noah peeked from the hallway, curiosity beating out caution. James managed a small, grateful smile. The past did not vanish, but its edges softened, no longer the only story in the room. Emma chose forward, one honest step at a time. Night deepened to quiet, the apartment a sanctuary of soft breaths and slow clocks. Emma stood at Noah's doorway, hand resting on the frame, watching him sleep. She whispered, "We're stronger now, letting the truth settle." The window held the city's distant glow, no longer a threat, just a horizon. She sat beside him, brushing hair from his brow, and said, "We'll never stop fighting for peace." Her reflection in the glass was tired, luminous and real. The fear had not vanished, but it had learned her name. She smiled, small and certain, and finally allowed herself to rest.